You're listening to the Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing the shame associated with being low or no contact with your in laws. Hi, Miriam Susan here. Welcome to today's episode where we're going to be talking about shame. We're going to be talking about the roots of shame, why there's some shame associated with being low or no contact with your in laws, and how to find peace with the decision that you and your husband have made. So, first of all, let's talk about some of the roots of shame. As a Catholic family, and even just being in a Christian community, there's a lot of family values and cultural values that are assumed that don't really necessarily work if you have toxic in laws. There is a strong push for a sense of unity, a sense of peace, forgiveness. And sometimes that happens to a fault. And it can bring on a sense of shame that make us feel like we are betraying our faith, that we are betraying our family, that it is a sinful thing that we're doing by being low or no contact. And this should just go without saying that I know that if you are low or no contact with your in laws, chances are you did not make that decision rashly. It was a decision that was a long time coming. There were a lot of things that happened. Maybe that decision was made to go no contact relatively quickly, but there was a lot of prayer, a lot of things that happened before that maybe spur of the moment no contact, because maybe it was a really severe incident that was like, okay, there's no going back. We have to cut off contact. So that's just an assumption that I'm making. If you are low or no contact, that you are like pretty much everybody I've ever come into contact with who has gone low or no contact, that it was not a spur of the moment decision. And chances are you did talk with your in laws, you did let them know what some of the issues were, even if they say that they don't know. So the first one really is a cultural or family expectation that, you know, that's not what Christians do. That's not what Catholics do. That's not what families do. We don't turn our backs on people who we don't necessarily get along with. That's all well and good until it's toxic behavior, until it's abusive behavior. And so that shame is, I guess, I don't know that I would say it's valid because I don't like shame at all, but it has those ideas have their place in that we don't just give up on somebody because they might be difficult to get along with. However, we're not talking about people who just kind of rub you the wrong way sometimes. Maybe there's a personality conflict. We're talking about toxic situations, abusive situations, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, spiritual, financial, any of those kinds of abuse. That's what we're talking about here in going low or no contact. Now, another root of shame is a misconception about what honor thy father and mother means. Now, I do have an entire episode dedicated to how to apply honor your father and mother when it comes to toxic in laws. And that is episode 6, if you want to go back and listen to that, if you haven't done so already. But there is a misconception that often is used by toxic people to try to keep you under their control by quoting the scriptures, by using that commandment, honor your father and mother. And what we need to realize, and I go into this in depth in episode number 6, what we need to realize is that we can honor our parents and our in-laws from afar. That does not mean we have to obey them. Honoring and obeying is two totally different things. And then one other thing that I want to point out about the root of shame is sometimes when we are in these situations, it makes us feel like we're less than. We're less than a perfect wife. We're less than a good daughter-in-law. And we end up struggling with feelings of inadequacy, or even feeling like we've failed as a wife or failed as a daughter-in-law because we can't fix these toxic family dynamics or be the perfect peacemaker wife. And if you have a toxic situation, if you have an abusive situation, it is not your job to fix anything. It's not. Your job, if anything, is to protect any children that you have and to help protect your marriage. And the importance of that job cannot be understated, especially if perhaps your husband doesn't quite see it. You're going to have most of the burden put on your shoulders to try to protect your marriage. And so I get it. There is a shame that comes with feeling like if I could just be a better daughter-in-law, if I could just be a better wife, that things would get better with my in-laws. But that's not usually how it works. Now, the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to the shame that comes with being low or no contact is that there is a difference between having some distance between you and your in laws and being disrespectful. There is a huge difference between respecting your in laws and giving them access to you, your marriage, and your family. You can respect someone without giving them full access to your life. Period. We are called to leave our fathers and mothers, cling to our spouses, and if we have in laws, if we have parents that are interfering with our marriage and interfering with our family, then there deserves to be some level of distance. Setting boundaries with toxic individuals in your family does not equate to disrespect. Now, how you do it can be disrespectful, but just the fact that you have some distance between you and your in laws, that does not mean that you are being disrespectful. You are just asking for some autonomy. And with that autonomy comes a limit to the access that somebody has on your family. Toxic people love to be enmeshed, they love to be in control, they love to know every single detail about everything that you're doing because at some point they like to use it against you. So, there is no issue with having some distance between you and your in laws if there is a toxic dynamic at play. Now, again, with this distance, what it offers you and your family is some protection for your mental and your emotional health. The Catholic Church has a very strong stance on the sanctity of life. And part of that, I have to believe, includes caring for yourself, caring for your own well being, caring for the well being and the life of your family. Self care, when it comes to taking care of your mental and emotional health, is not selfish. It can be extremely necessary. Many of us who are in this situation as daughters in law with toxic in laws, we will sacrifice our mental and emotional health in order to do what we think is keeping the peace. But guess what? The only person who has peace when we do that is our in laws, right? For us, we feel like we're being destroyed from the inside out because we have to keep quiet. We have to not rock the boat. We have to be on our best behavior and be super polite and super agreeable so that we don't make mother-in-law mad or father-in-law mad. But at what cost? It costs us mentally and emotionally. And let's think about some healthy boundaries that we can put into place to show that distance isn't disrespect. It can look like just not having a phone call every single day with your in laws. It can be not doing any video calls with your in laws. It can be if you go to visit them, if they live in another location where you can't just drive over and drive back home easily in the same day, it can be we're going to visit, but we're going to stay in a hotel. And if they come to visit, it can be you can come visit, but you're going to stay in a hotel. There is no disrespect there. It is simply saying, this is our family. This is the way we want to do things. And there's no real right or wrong answer. If it can protect your peace, if it can make a visit with your in laws, if your husband's not quite ready to go no contact, but you're just low contact, it can help make a visit more tolerable if you have that time to go back to a hotel and decompress with just you and your husband and your children. I can't tell you how important that is to have that time to decompress. Or if you are happening to or if you happen to visit your in laws and you have to stay with them, perhaps for financial reasons, or maybe they just live out in the middle of nowhere and there is nowhere else to stay, you can also put some distance between you and your in laws by saying, okay, this is our bedtime. We go to bed when the kids go to bed. End of story. That way, you're not sucked into conversations like my husband and I were that would last well into the late hours or early morning hours. And we end up exhausted. We end up sleeping late. It ended up being a lot of gossip, just not healthy conversations. So, doing that when you are visiting, having that time when you and your family go to bed and wake up at your own time, that can be one way to put some distance if you're still low contact and haven't gone no contact if you do have to go visit your in-laws in person. Now, the last part I want to discuss is how to find peace with this decision. I know that there is a lot of guilt that comes with going low or no contact. And what I want you to do is understand that guilt is when you have done something wrong. Shame is what people put on you when they want you to feel like you're guilty for something, even if you've done nothing wrong. So I want you to understand that by going low or no contact, there is nothing really to feel guilty about, with the understanding that you did it in a respectful way to your in laws, as respectful as you possibly could be. When we went no contact, we kept things very short. My husband just said, we would just like to have a break and please don't contact us. We'll call you when we're ready. And it didn't work. They totally disregarded our request for no contact, and it led to a longer letter that kind of explained for my husband what he was thinking, what he needed to see change, and basically explained our reasons for going no contact. Now, we had thought in that at that moment that was the first time we had ever done that. But I actually had gone through some emails and I had saved a lot of emails from my in-laws. And we went back and we found that about 10 years prior, my husband had sent a very similar letter to his parents over email. So know that because you've gone low or no contact, you could feel, or your husband especially, could feel very guilty, feeling like he's betraying the family, especially if that toxic family member is throwing out all the punches. If they're bringing up scripture, spiritual abuse, and trying to manipulate you and use it against you, that can be very triggering and make you or your husband feel very, very guilty. So when you have those feelings come up, it's important to show yourself some compassion. You've got to have some compassion for yourself with what's going on because it's hard. It is very hard. And most people on the outside may not understand. If they have a healthy relationship with their parents and their in-laws, they're not going to get it. They may even try to guilt you and shame you into getting back in contact with your in-laws, and they don't know what's going on. They don't understand. So be reminded when these feelings of guilt or shame creep up, remind yourself that God sees your efforts to create a loving and peaceful home and family. Again, if you, chances are you did do this act of going no contact or low contact with as much compassion and as much charity as you possibly could. And so when those feelings come up of guilt, remind yourself, did I do everything that I possibly could do to make this better? Why did I have to go no contact? Chances are it's because you felt like you were backed into a corner, like you had no other choice for the sake of your family. And so those feelings of guilt are really not founded. Another thing that can help you find peace with your decision to go low or no contact is to seek out support from your faith community and from your community at large. Perhaps finding a group of other women who have gone through similar situations. It's funny when I bring this up in the circles that I'm in, how many other women get it. This is not something that generally comes up very casually in, a casual conversation, but I have been surprised, and I can think of 3 friends, 4 friends right off the top of my head that have said, "You know what? I get it. Maybe my situation hasn't been as extreme as yours, but I understand. I have in-law issues as well. I have issues with my parents, and so I get it. I understand that these relationships, and I get it. These relationships can be very, very hard. And I can't tell you how validating that is to have people in your life where they understand what you're going through and they do not judge you for it. And I've really not found that many people that judge us for what we've done. The only people that I've found that do judge us are the ones that my mother in law has convinced that we have done something wrong, and they've never, ever heard our side of the story. So, finding that support amongst your peers, amongst people in your community, amongst people online, that's how you can help combat the shame and the guilt that you might feel and find some peace, because that's really the goal, right? Desiring peace. We are desiring peace for our family. And then I wanted to just close out with a few scriptures to try to encourage you in this journey. And it is a journey. And sometimes you might feel absolute, certainty that this is what you needed to do. This is the right decision. This is what we had to do for our family and your husband as well. And then there will be times when you think, maybe I didn't give him enough chances. Maybe I didn't do quite the right thing. Maybe there's something else that I can do. And chances are your husband will feel this way too. And so you need to have this sense of certainty. You have to know why you did it, be solid in the reasons why you went no contact. So when those times of doubt and guilt and shame creep into your mind, you have a way to combat them because they will come. I don't think I've heard of anybody who has gone low or no contact that hasn't had those feelings of regret, of guilt, of shame for a fleeting moment until they remember, this is why I did it. This is why we're in the situation we're in. We did not choose to be in this situation. We were backed into a corner. This was the only option we felt like we had. And so now we are where we are because of the choices of my in-laws. Chances are that's exactly what's happened to you. You're not in the situation you're in because of your own doing. It is because you tried to set up a boundary and your in-laws ignored them, totally disregarded them, blew right through them. And now you've had to go low or no contact. So here's some scriptures and a basic interpretation. I'm not claiming that this is the correct interpretation, but an interpretation of these scriptures that may offer you some peace. So the first one is from Proverbs 4:23. Keep your heart with all diligence. Keep your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. So to me, this verse really emphasizes the importance of guarding our heart, guarding our inner peace, guarding our well-being, and setting boundaries with toxic people can very much be a way of protecting our heart and our mental health, allowing the best of ourselves to flow out into the world. Because when we are stressed, when we are feeling shame, when we are feeling guilt, that's not our best flowing out into the world. That's not the springs of life flowing from us. That's really what Satan wants us to do. He wants us to feel stuck. He wants us to feel guilt and regret and not be able to stand in the truths that God has given us. And it keeps us stuck and it keeps us afraid. The next one is from the Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 10, verse 14. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Now, this scripture comes to mind so many times when we've had issues with my in-laws. And it is a situation where I feel like they don't receive us. They don't receive us as we are. And they don't listen to us. They totally disregard us. And Jesus encouraged his followers to move on from situations like this where you're not accepted or respected. Now, this verse does serve as a powerful reminder that it's okay. And Jesus did this. He walked away from toxic situations without any guilt. And then finally, from the book of 2 Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7, for God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power and love and self-control. This scripture highlights how God empowers us with strength to act in love and maintain a sense of self-control. And that self-control includes setting boundaries when necessary. Establishing boundaries and having firm boundaries is a sign of strength, and it's a sign of self-respect. It is not a sign of fear or weakness or revenge or retribution or anything that your toxic in-laws might say that they are. Boundaries show self-control. It's an opportunity when you have boundaries to exercise self-control so that you don't get in a situation where you lose it, right? We don't want to have situations like that where we are so worked up because of a situation with our in-laws that we lose it. And so having that spirit of power and love and self-control, that's what God gives us, and gives us the power to have boundaries with other people. If other people do not respect us, if they treat us badly, if they are abusive towards us, it is our duty as wives and mothers to protect our families and to not be a stumbling block to our children, to show them that it's okay to be treated poorly and just tolerate it. If you didn't listen to my interview a couple episodes back with my daughters, that's a really big one to listen to because they talk about how they kind of saw the behavior of my in-laws as being normalized because we never addressed it. Well, we did finally address it because now we're no contact, but we did not address it as they were growing up. And so they just kind of thought that's how it is. It is what it is. And that was not the best example that we could have given to our kids. Now, I know that there is a huge burden of shame when we have this situation where we are low or no contact with our in-laws. And I want to encourage you that, again, like I said earlier, there are so many other women who understand. And I don't want you to be afraid to speak up and speak out. Find people you can trust. Share with them what is going on, because I will tell you this, when you start to share your story, when you start to share that you're struggling with difficult situations with your in-laws, the burden lightens. Because number one, you're probably going to find some people that understand and they're going through something similar. And so there is something mystical that happens when you and another fellow sister in Christ talk about these kinds of issues and realize you're not alone. And you absolutely are not alone. Please don't feel shame over the state of your relationship. If you have tried everything that you possibly can, if you have been as charitable as you can possibly be, if you have forgiven over and over and over again and given chance after chance after chance, and then things just got to a point where maybe your health started to fall apart. Maybe your marriage is starting to suffer. Maybe your children are starting to show signs of stress and anxiety and overwhelm with being around toxic people. The best thing you can do is go low or no contact to protect your family. So please do not carry this burden of shame. It is not yours to carry. Please, from this point on, try to put it down. Whenever you feel like you need to pick it back up again because something has been said, something happens, and you feel bad or guilty, remember, this is not your choice. This is not any of our choices. None of us want to have a strained, difficult low or no contact relationship with our in-laws. I don't think any of us entered into our marriages feeling like that, unless there were already issues prior to getting married. But just know that that shame, that guilt, it's not for you to carry. Please walk in the freedom and the peace of knowing that you are doing your job by protecting your marriage, by protecting your children, by protecting your own mental health. And actually, one thing I haven't mentioned is you are protecting your in-laws from the near occasion of sin. You are preventing them from sinning you are preventing them from sinning, the near occasion of sin, by going low or no contact. If they sin, if they are constantly emotionally, spiritually, financially, physically abusive to you or your family, that is sinful, obviously. And every time you see them, it opens the door for them to sin more. So if you go low or no contact, you are shutting off that opportunity for them to sin. So it's actually a very charitable thing for you to do if the relationship is so toxic that cutting off contact really is better for your soul and theirs. So I hope that this message is an encouragement to you. God bless you. Thank you for listening. Go in peace. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you've ever wondered just how toxic your relationship with your in-laws really is, I've got the perfect tool for you. Introducing the new free Toxic In-Laws Assessment, a self-graded quiz designed to help you identify the true level of toxicity in your relationship with your in-laws. Whether you're unsure if your in-laws are really that bad or you think they might be worse than you realize, this assessment will give you the clarity you need. Don't leave it to guesswork. Take the free Toxic In-Laws Assessment now and start your journey towards healthier and more peaceful family dynamics. Visit desiringpeace.com/quiz to get started. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and/or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.